Hey, what's up, Alex? This week, or not even this week, this month, you've been in the home buying process. You've been looking at a couple deals, different things like that. And one thing that you've noticed that is many ways to skin a cat when it comes to purchasing a house. I know a lot of people know about the FHA loan or the conventional loan and things like that. But this week, you done found two different ways to acquire properties or two different offers that sellers are willing to give you to make the deal or make the home buying purchase more feasible for you as a buyer, especially with these high interest rates. So let's jump into that right quick. Let's jump into some of the things that you learned this week on the home buying journey.
Yeah, I would say, it's been longer than this week, but this whole process, started trying to buy a triplex back in end of January, and that basically the seller had come to me with an offer, and I had moved on from that deal because I had tried to bring him down so low that he initially declined, and I was like, well, I can't come to his number unless he comes to mine. And I walked away, and that was when I told you, I was like, I was surprised when he came back to me like the following week and was like, "Hey, I'll take your number." And we went under contract and stuff. And today is Sunday. Friday, I was supposed to close this upcoming Tuesday. Friday, they tell me that there's zoning issues and it has to get pushed back. It has to get rezoned. So I was, on pause with that. And then a realtor reached out to me, just sent me a contact info for a lender that she said works really good with investors. And I had asked her about a fourplex that she had listed for sale that I was trying to buy before this triplex. And she was like, I was like, is the seller still firm? She's like, no, they actually now want someone to assume the loan. That was interesting. I've never had that just presented. We've seen the deals like Pace Morby doing subject twos and stuff, but I thought you had to actually go and find those people. I didn't know they just came to you just in pain.
Yeah, and for people that don't know what a loan assumption is, and some of the loans that are assumable, VA loans, FHA loans, especially a lot of the government backed programs or loan assumptions. What a loan assumption is let's say, I'm just throwing out random numbers here, but let's say somebody bought a house back in the COVID days of 2020, 2021 and got that 3.5% interest rate on there. And then they got the 3.5% interest rate on there, and then they live in a house for a couple of years, and then now they having problems selling the home, or they're not doing financially well and they can't afford the monthly payments. Instead of trying to put the house up for sale for the price that they bought it for, and then of course incurring all of those fees, and then of course realtor fees on top of that, they will still be underwater on the property. So what some programs out there like loan assumption gives you as a buyer the right to assume the loan that they already had at 3.5%, even though the mortgage rates right now is at 6 and 7%. So you can assume that loan at 3.5%, and then you would assume the loan. They will put the loan in your name. They will deed the house in your name. So you go through similar to the same closing process, but you get that 3.5% interest rate that the seller had originally from back in the day. So the VA loans are one that's very consumable, and no, you do not need, in most states, you do not need to be a veteran to assume a VA loan. I was actually, Alex, after you had that conversation, but before I go there, Alex, you got anything else you want to say about that, or I missed out about the loan assumption?
No, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, no. So after you had that conversation, I started looking up. I was on Zillow and then a couple other websites, and then I put in the keyword. First, I put seller finance just to see how many properties in Florida and Georgia, and then Michigan had seller finance contingencies in their descriptions. And then I put loan assumptions out there, and then it's more than I thought that the sellers are willing to do loan assumptions to transfer that property out of their name, to give the seller concessions or give the buyer concessions to have a lower interest rate to make sure their monthly payment is lower. It's a couple other nuances in there. I'm not going to deep dive into loan assumptions, but so going back to that first deal, me, I'm always talking about doing disrespectful offers and things like that. Let's talk about how that, the Cliff Note view of how that materialized, because every time we talk about disrespectful offers, and especially in a high interest rate environment, we need to bring that number down. So how did that materialize on that deal?
So, like I said, it came at my surprise that the seller even wanted to come to my number. Initially, when he had first publicly listed the property for sale, it was listed at right at 285, 285,000, and he had listed it last year towards the beginning of the year. So it's been on the market for nearly a whole year. And he's been dropping the price ever since. And then when I had seen the property, he had it at 199, and I had offered him 170. And initially he came down, said that he would do 185, and I said no, I'm not going to do that. Then he came down to 179, and I still declined. The realtor said, well, the seller is not willing to go any lower. And I said, well, I'm not willing to come up higher. She was like, I understand you have to get your number. And so I just moved on. For that next week, I was just like looking at other properties, trying to put in offers, reaching out to different agents in different markets, not in the same area or nothing. And then just randomly, she messaged me and was like, hey, the seller wants to come to your number. And that came at my surprise. Wasn't 170, but 172. And I was like, I'm not going to fight him over $2,000. So I took the offer.
Right. And it's a couple things that need to be quickly pointed out there. One, especially for the new investors out there or somebody that's looking to purchase a home to even occupy, you can't go and give a low ball or a quote unquote disrespectful offer to somebody who just put their property on the market in the last 15 days, 15, 20 days. What you should be doing is filtering to 90 days or 75 days on market or older homes. And the reason why is because usually when a realtor and a seller gets under contract, it's for 90 days. And then now at that 75, 90-day mark, that contract is pushing to expire. So the real estate agent is desperate to get a deal done. The seller is really desperate to get a deal done because, of course, they probably moved into another place or they got plans to move to another place. So they probably got money spread out too far, so they're willing to come down. So if you look, in that time frame, it'll be more people willing to will and deal. Some people won't, some people will. Don't ever get your heart just fixated on one property. If they're not getting you the offer that makes sense for you, then you go to the next one. So that's one of the big things out there. And the other big thing that you said that a lot of people can't do is take their emotions out of it. I mean, like you said, you knew what your hardline number was. Your hardline number was 170, 170, 175 range. And then you have to have the ability to walk away. You put your offer out there, they're going to counter, of course. If you can't go no higher, you don't spread yourself thin to go higher. You just fix on your number. And you stay at that number, and then, it's up to them now. But don't ever have your heart and use your emotions just to be fixated on something else. If you can't get your number, then pivot to go somewhere else. And then, like in your case, he got close, he possibly could, to the number to make it make financially sense for him. It's $2,000 off. Then okay, then you can have a little wiggle room there. But don't sit there and go $15,000, $20,000 out of your range just to appease a seller. Remember, they need to sell it more than you need to buy it. So always understand that.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. And that's a good point to keep in mind. Just when negotiating, I think it's in our American culture to not negotiate. So it intimidates people trying to make an offer on a property or something. Like we talk about, that list price is not the sale price, or it's not the value of the home. So don't be afraid to try to get a better deal for yourself.
Right, and if
for home buying.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people to understand, when you see a price on, these third-party websites, the Zillows, the Redfins, and things like that, when you see a person's house listed for sale, that is not the value of the house. That is just the price that they want for the house. And then don't sit there and compare their price to what the Zillow market value price is. Don't do that. So understand the mathematics that go into coming up with their offer price. Most of them don't get an appraisal, but they know the ballpark price of what a house sold for in the area. And then they also know that buyers will come to try to negotiate the price down. So they kick the price up. So if they try to negotiate down, it's still getting to the actual number they want. Then, of course, they're adding in the fees of seller and buyer agent of 6% if they're deciding to keep on the whole fees that they present. They also know the processing fees. The realtors know the processing fees. So all of that number is added into there to get to their number, but they're willing to negotiate down to the number that they need to make that deal happen. But the list price that you see is not the value. That is just the price that they want. That's just like having a beat up Pinto and they saying they want $5,000 knowing damn well it's only worth $100. But if they get somebody crazy enough to pay the $5,000, then that's what it's worth.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it
always be
reminds me,
cognizant of that.
like to your point, like I remember during the COVID era, I say that like that was like World War II or something, but there was a 2-story house in my neighborhood. You know my neighborhood. There ain't nothing
Mm-hmm.
fancy, just a cookie cutter homes. But there was a 2-story house that sold for like $538,000. Insane. You'll there are crazy buyers out there, but does it mean that house is worth it? I guarantee you, he's probably down over 100 grand in equity right now. So
Yeah, and then so going on to some other things that's out there. Like I said, people know the conventional loans, the FHA loans. For people that's new to the game, especially people that's hitting their 2025 and they looking for their first starter home. FHAs, that's the cheapest way to get into a house. FHA, and then if you in the military, VA, that's the cheapest way to get in a house. When I mean cheapest way to get in a house, I mean the money that you got to spend down. Just for the record, I am not a fan of FHA and VA loans. And I am a veteran, so I'm not trying to poo-poo on the veterans here. I'm not a fan of them because you're putting a low down payment, unless you house hacking. If you're house hacking, that's a different story. But if you're just doing it to own or occupy it, you're putting a low down payment down, and that means you're paying the max amount. If you're not, willing and dealing and bringing the price down, you're paying the max amount monthly possible. We all know life happens. Life happens. People lose jobs. People change jobs. Somebody gets sick. Medical bills come due. Price of eggs triple and double. Stuff happens. Gas prices fluctuate. So if you're paying the max allowable and then you're like barely meeting that debt to income ratio, and then life happens, and then now you got to miss a payment, and then you're screwed. So I'm always a proponent of trying to put as much down as humanly possible can to keep that payment low. If life happens, you can find another job, but it's only $1,000 instead of $3,000-$4,000 a month. It's easier to come up with $1,000 than $3,000 and $4,000 a month. So that's something that I always want to point out, that the FHA and VA, you can get in there for little to no. And I know a lot of people that's in there, and we had the article and we talked about this last week, Alex, about the biggest delinquency rate in the United States right now is people on FHA and VA loans, because they put the lowest down payment, and then life creep happened and the things happen, and then now they can't afford the mortgages because they're paying the biggest payment out of everybody.
Yep. No, the seller on that fourplex actually has a VA loan.
Right. I got one more. You brought up the fact that the seller has a VA loan, and then now, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, she got a VA loan, so she's paying, of course, the max payments. Of course, she got tenants, but again, even with tenants, now a tenant moves out, a tenant will miss a payment. Now she has to come up with the seller has to come up with the money to pay that mortgage. If the tenants move out and then she don't have the money personally, the seller don't have the money personally on them, they can't afford to make the payment. Am I right? Am I close?
Yeah.
Is that the situation they're seeing right now?
Well, so the tenant, that's what I got to figure out. I'm still waiting on her to get back on if the tenants are still making payments. But I do have questions about it, I mean, she's just got the whole property managed weird. Her sister was managing it. On one of the units, she had like her mom living there. Her mom no longer lives there. But it's just a weird situation. And she's behind on her payments. So, that makes me question, why? If tenants are paying you, why aren't you paying the rent? So it's definitely questionable.
Yeah, and probably the why, probably not the right answer. It's probably life happens. I mean, people are bad with managing money, and then you got the family dynamic in there. So how families screw people over in business. And I'm not saying that's what's happening in this situation, but the key is the tenant's paying. Now, what she do with the money, what the seller does with the money after the tenants pay, then you can fix that. You're gonna throw your team on there and get that done. The key is the tenant's paying.
Yeah.
If the tenant's not paying, then yeah, that's a problem. But if the tenant's paying and then the seller is just doing something egregious with the money, that's a them problem. That's not a you problem.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With that said, guys, if you guys got any questions or comments, let us know. Don't forget to like this video, share, subscribe, send us more content, and we'll see you guys on the next one.